nothing but scrubs that was thrown out of the elite order and became skinheads and all these other type things there. You see what I'm saying? So those are spin-off groups which came in the hundreds of these groups. But the point I'm trying to make here is the original Klan is an elite advanced group that handles all your finances and everything that you about in this society is done by the same secret society. Let me give you another example. The same guy that told him about you can't hate and all in the new Klan told this brother, and I often wonder this, how neighborhoods can be all white and 2 or 3 blacks move in and these whites can move out where the whole neighborhood don't take 10, 15, 20 years to become black. They can move out overnight. Right. He said there's a policy because they're a part of a secret society. So if you're a brotherhood, you look out for each other. Right. There's a policy that whenever blacks move into a certain neighborhood, and they know that neighborhood is going to be black, and some black people, some whites, some broke protocol, and them sold the nigger. What they do is the bank will call all the people in that neighborhood and offer to buy their house. And that way they can sell the house and be out of there in record time. And meanwhile, the bank sell the shit back to blacks with these little real estate people at a high price. So we talk about an advanced system. You see what I'm coming from? We talk about a very advanced system. Now let me give you some other information. The Spin Guard Brothers, which is the NAACP, is a part of this whole Klan organization. So the Spin Guard Brothers, which is a Jewish organization, which is also a part of Renee Griffin Anti-Defamation League, started the NAACP. As well as later on started the Civil Rights Movement. Now why did they start the Civil Rights Movement? There were 2 Civil Rights movements. One was some black guy in Alabama. See, the key is that they started in Reconstruction, they started the Freeway Bureau, which started the black colleges and the black churches. See, the key is, if you're going to have a black civilization, we need to be in it and control it, so we can dictate how far you go with what we give you. Right. So the Freedom Bureau started up a lot of this stuff in Reconstruction also. And all of them are together. Now, they start up the black colleges, and one of the main mottos of black colleges is culture for service. White people culture to serve white people. The rest of black history is self-explanatory. Which is Negro People Aid, which is your first post-graduate fraternity, later on led to your other fraternities. Now your other fraternities were supposed to be having the same policy of the Boulay. It's just that by it having a turnaround of people in the undergrad coming in all different lifestyles, it never did get to that level as the Negro Boulay or Sigma Chi Phi, which is basically the advisors of the king to keep the white man house and all. You see. But they started the black preachers. Which is, if you're going to give a person a theology, it's not going to be far from the damn Catholics and any other imperialistic form of worship. Give an example. My brother's in travel in South Carolina down there to them Goonie people, the people down in Beaufort, the African thing. Right. The Gulf Festival and all that. They went down there to some Goonie people, which is some Oshun priestess of Europe that does reading. Right. When they got down there, they saw a mysterious building. It was unbelievable. They said, "Oh God, what is that thing there?" This old-looking mysterious building. And the Ocean Goonie people told them, when the slaves first got out of slavery, they built them a church for worship. And they all had different worships from the different, they had maintained and cultivated Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, Bojan, or whatever these African societies. And they knew that each slave had different worships, ways of worshiping. So they would come into the church, they'd have something like a assembly, like a home, everybody come there, they would do an opening festival, and then they would stop, and each person would go to each side of the church and worship their own way of worship, based on the African tribes, or the African systems of worship. And then they would come back together at the end and have this benediction. The white man came in and saw that shit, built him a Baptist church across the street, and the other church been big with it since. And these people lost tons of that information. So, these churches were also set up to make sure that we didn't have no link to our ancient African civilization. By giving us a doctrine that said that we was evil. And all that's based on the devil. You see? And training these Negro preachers to be nothing but Uncle Toms. Whereas you know that we didn't even have a census of black people until the Negro preachers signed all the black people up for the census in the early 1900s. So this was a way to get over on top of the preachers who ultimately didn't even know they was getting over on. I mean, it's not like some of these preachers ultimately know. They do now. It's T.D. Jakes is the government man. We'll get into that also too. But to get on top of the religion, get on top of the colleges, because there was always these colleges were always founded by the churches. Okay? So the civil rights movement, number one, they looked up and they had Noble Ali's movement, they had Honorable Elijah Muhammad's movement, they had other movements in Harlem and different things. You see, they had the jazz movement with expression. They had Negritude, that thing, the Harlem Renaissance. The Negritude, you know, they had Harlem Renaissance. They had all these different movements, a home and abroad. Garbage movement. And they figured out in the 50s that we got to do something. These people going to raise up and they're going to have their own nationalist system. Because they are big in numbers. Okay? They also knew that between 1865 and 1965, we had made a subculture with interculture and a cultural powerhouse that educated black people from high school and college on the same level as white people with less facilities, poor conditions. Music, entertainment, education, doctors, lawyers, baseball players, and everything that the greatest society had, we had in segregation. Separate but equal work. And produced a black Camelot that was foreseen, by the Moors, had become a reality of a new Egypt in a land far away. They had already had the history of it. And they would have to break that black Camelot. Because the main culture started borrowing from that subculture. The music, the way white people express themselves, just the basis of cool and rock and roll out of the 50s. It started changing the greater culture. You see? They knew that if we had gone segregated up into the 1980s or 90s, that we would have been an economic powerhouse that could never be broken. They came to New York and they found out that there was a plenty of civil rights movement that was going on with Adam Clayton Powers in the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X. And they understood that the original civil rights movement of Adam Clayton Powers would not be controlled by niggas up in Harlem, by letting the white man dictate to them how this shit was supposed to be done. So they got a big ass problem. Meanwhile, this country here never being apart from rivers.
Sorry about the little overflow like that. I got kind of interested in what he was saying. You know what I'm saying? But during that spill right there, the Honorable Bobby Hemmitt talks about how the U.S. government knew that if they didn't break down and give us integration, that we was become a powerhouse, and they had meetings on this. He said from 1855 to 1955. We had everything there they had, but, with less the capacity. And they knew if that we lasted until the 1980s and 1990s under segregation, we would be an economic powerhouse that couldn't be stopped. So they had a meeting about this. And I'm going to talk about the meeting because the meeting is true. As you see right here, I'm on Poverty Race Control Action Council, Civil Rights Research. You know what I'm saying? And it talks about a guy named Thomas MacDonald in early expressway planning because they used the expressways to break this up. Now, many people don't know about Thomas MacDonald. So let me give you a quick backdrop on him. Thomas Harris MacDonald, this is from Wikipedia. Thomas Harris Chief MacDonald, July 23rd, 1881 to April 7, 1957, was an American civil engineer and a politician with tremendous influence in building the country's interstate system. He served as chief of Iowa State Highway Commission and chief of the Public Bureau of Roads from 1919 to 1939, and the chief of the Bureau of Public Roads from 1939 until March 31st, 1953, and he shortly resigned after Dwight D. Eisenhower began his first term on January 20th, 1953. He directed national road policy for 34 years, serving under 7 different presidents. During his lifetime, he supervised the creation of 3.5 million miles of highway. He later personally directed the creation of the Alaskan Highway and helped serve the countries in Central America by building the Inter-American Highway. Now, I want you to remember this part right here. He was a force as powerful as his counterpart at the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, and says Stephen B. Goddard, yet is virtually unknown to most Americans. I'm going to repeat this again. He was a force as powerful as his counterpart at the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, but he is virtually unknown to all Americans. So he was the J. Edgar Hoover of this, but like I said, it's not really discussed. All right. Now back to this. The linkage between the inner city expressways and the destruction of low-income housing actually originated the Bureau of Public Roads, BPR, the federal agency established in 1919. Thomas H. MacDonald, a highway civil engineer from Iowa, headed the BPR from its founding until early 1953. As the United States began into the automobile era, MacDonald religiously promoted his agency's road-building agenda. However, over time, MacDonald developed a sophisticated conception of a relationship between urban highways and urban housing, and a relation between these two elements and the need of modernization and construction of the American city. Heading of a federal agency that became a significant part of the nation's transportation system, MacDonald only gradually incorporated the city into his thinking. After all, his former state highway engineer in Iowa his first job had been to get the farmer out the mud and building rural roads to connect widely dispersed farmers from nearby towns and cities. With the increasing emergence of American automobile culture, urban and rural, demanded higher surface roads. By the 1930s, urban mass transit was on the decline almost everywhere, as Americans seemed to prefer the convenience, flexibility, and the privacy of automobile travel. On another level, the nation's railroads were in decline by the 1930s, never to fully recover. Eyeing the enormous untapped urban market, the automobile industry had a major interest in expressways and in federal legislation, in particular the extremely popular General Motors Futurama exhibit at the 1939 New York World Fair. As historian Mark I. Foster noted, stimulating public thinking in favor of mass urban freeway building. Norman Speeders, the designer of the Futurama exhibit, also promoted an idea: national highway motor system connecting all cities with population of more than 100,000. By the end of the 1930s, Thomas MacDonald and the BPR pushed an interregional highway system linking the nation's largest metropolitan areas, an idea given an initial form by President Franklin D. Roosevelt himself. According to Secretary of Agriculture Henry A. Wallace, at the meeting in 1938, right? The 1938 meeting with MacDonald and the president sketched out a map system of east to west, north to south, transcontinental highways. Right? The meeting is in 1938. And then requested MacDonald to make a report on the possibilities of building such a highway system. The BPR subsequent report, Tolls, Roads, and Free Roads, largely written by MacDonald and his assistant H.S. Fairbanks, completed in 1939, represented the first comprehensive effort to conceptualize later what became the interstate highway system. Significantly, the report acknowledged that obviously between express highways and urban reconstruction, it made a strong case that highway planning should take place within the context of an ongoing program of slum clearance and urban redevelopment. Wallace reported to Roosevelt that BPR planned to establish nothing less than a basis for complete physical rebuilding of American cities. The big problem Wallace noticed was not the transcontinental automobile traffic, but automobile congestions in the cities themselves. If new express highways penetrated and traversed the cities, traffic flow to the business center will be facilitated. More than that, carefully routing these aerial highways could cut through and clear out blighted housing areas. Let me read it again. More than that, careful routing of these artery highways could cut through and clear out blighted housing areas. There's a presence around the core of the cities, particularly older ones, a wider, broad, and decadent and dying property, which has become, or is in fact becoming, a slum area. Land acquisition in these slum areas for highways and construction and urban redevelopment will result in elimination of unsightly, unsanitary districts where the land values was constantly depreciating. As Wallace portrayed the situation, the BPR highway construction plan could become a central element in reconstruction and revitalization of the central cities. A second major highway report, Interregional Highways, was completed in 1944. It was prepared by the National Integration Highway Committee, appointed by President Roosevelt and headed by Thomas MacDonald. This report, which recommended an interregional highway system of 40,000 miles, actually mapped out a highway network that looks remarkably like the present-day interstate highway system. The 1944 report also made clear that the interregional and interstate highway system will penetrate the heart of metropolitan areas. Large cities will be encircled by inner and outer beltways and traversed by radical expressways tying the urban system together. MacDonald believed that these urban expressways are essential to the future growth and development of the American city, especially the modern slum clearance and urban reconstruction. Throughout the 40s and into the early 1950s, MacDonald's campaigned tirelessly for an inner city expressway that would clear out low-income housing and tenement districts, eliminating the blighted district congestions worthy of the heart of the city. He wrote it tight like that for a reason. Dislocated urban residents, MacDonald suggested, will move to new suburbs and commute to city jobs on the new high-speed, multi-function expressways. In a 1947 speech to the U.S. Chambers of Commerce and for the U.S. Chamber of Conference on urban problems, MacDonald whimsically dismissed the invariable housing construction that accompanied urban building express building. It is a happy circumstance that the living conditions for the family can be reestablished and permitted the social as well as the economic decay at the heart of the cities to be converted to a public asset. The new urban highways MacDonald and others contend will both revitalize the city's central and permitted better housing and living conditions in the suburbs. To his credit, MacDonald also pushed for local policy plannings and construction and congressional legislation requiring new housing construction for those displaced from their homes by the expressway building. In an important statement in 1947, he made a case for relocation housing. No matter how urgently a highway improvement may be needed, the homes of the people who have nowhere to go should not be destroyed. Before dwellings are raised, new housing facilities should be provided for dispossessed occupants. The question of housing should be accepted as one of major planning problems when the city decides it needs and wants an expressway. Like most highwaymen, MacDonald fully concerned that relocation issues loom large in any urban highway project. Unlike most, however, he put these issues up front in speeches and writing. Almost alone, he urged the necessity for highway and community planning to accommodate the relocation of those displaced by road construction. Essential to MacDonald's urban interstate vision was necessary the integrating housing and the highway in a wider program of urban and community planning to be conducted at the local level. During the 1940s, the BPR Urban Road Division, working with housing and relocation agencies in New York, Chicago, and a few other cities to ease social consequences of a pre-state expressway construction. In New York, as early as 1939, the BPR Urban Road people worked with the City's Planning Commission and laid out an appropriate network of express routes. Joseph Bennett, the head of the Urban Road Division, prepared and distributed a manual on relocation attendance to city and state highway officials. It was clear to Barnett and MacDonald that the cities paid little prior attention to the problem of housing and relocation. In Chicago in the late 1940s, city officials estimated that several planning expressways could destroy over 881,000 housing units, but nothing had been done to provide returning housing for displaced families or to assist with the relocation problem. A BPR survey of the state highway departments in 1947 revealed that most of the states had done little or nothing to prepare for relocation difficulties that inevitably accompany urban highway construction. After the passing of the National Housing Act of 1949, which established procedures for the slum clearance and urban redevelopment, BPR connected with counterparts in housing and home financing agencies. We heard about them before, HHFA, especially in its Relocation and Development Office. Both agencies were involved in land acquisition and efforts that had a common interest in working cooperatively. The Housing Act required local agencies to find new housing for those displaced by urban redevelopment activities, but land taken by the highways had no such requirements. Throughout the 1940s, MacDonald's promoted an image of linkage between highway and housing, especially relocation housing, as well as the need for cooperative planning between state and local agencies prior to highway construction. These proposals, as historian Mark Garfield has suggested, were part of a larger interagency battle, an unsuccessful attempt by the Federal Works Agency, which administered the BPR, to wrest administration of the proposed urban development away from HAFA. Ultimately, these efforts were unsuccessful. In 1949, Harry S. Truman rejected the Coronation Highway and housing programs, citing anticipated high costs and difficulty of congressional passage. The federal involvement of a comprehensive highway planning at the local and metropolitan level would have been a tough sell in Congress at the time. It would have jeopardized the passage of sun clearance, redevelopment, and public housing proposals that had a strong constituency among big city mayors, downtown real estate investors' interests, and public housing reformers. Also in 1949, as part of the reorganization of federal agencies, BPR was shifted from Federal Work Agency to the Department of Commerce. The BPR became somewhat marginalized as urban policy programs of the Truman administration took off in a new direction, focusing on sun clearance and redevelopment. The programs were generally overturned, condemned urban land to private redevelopers. The Public Housing Provision Act of 1949, the authorization of 800,000 units of public housing over the next 6 years was never fully achieved. At that point, historian Garfield writes, the BPR lost interest in its board applications of the highway in the city and concentrated its attention exclusively on making travel by automobiles and trucks quicker and less expensive. MacDonald gave his speaking and writing crusade, and after President Dwight Eisenhower failed to reappoint him, he retired from BPR in 1953, serving as commissioner for 34 years. Highway engineers, with their narrow technical concerns, were left in control of the agency. The broad conception promoted by MacDonald linking urban expressways with housing redevelopment was dropped from public discussion and not to reappear until the 1960s, when the impact of the highway in the city had become more powerfully apparent. So there you have it. You know, that shows the meeting they had, how they had to go through and destroy all this stuff like that. You know, what Bobby Hemmitt was talking about, that, you know, they had to make sure they go through the black neighborhoods, but they consider some and blighted, you know, and it's all been a setup to build up these highways and stuff like that. They had more meetings after that. Here's someone with Eisenhower. He played a big part in that. Just took the baton from Harry S. Truman. You know what I'm saying? So they're more interested in building up the housing, building up the highway and kicking the people out. And that's what basically happened. But it was part of that because of the meeting said, we let these black people stay amongst themselves and stay segregated. You know what I'm saying? It will be an economic powerhouse. And that we can't stop them from, you know what I'm saying, having all this stuff and having these systems going on. So that's what it is, people, man. You know, it's right in the Zach. I'm gonna post this paper in the inbox, and I'm also posting about Thomas Harris. What's the new name? Thomas Harris MacDonald. You know what I'm saying? Who came up with the plan and tried to change it around. You know, here's the part right here. Between 1940 and 1950, metropolitan areas, that is the city and their suburbs, absorbed 81% of the nation's population growth. The pattern speeded up in 1950 to 1955, where the metropolitan areas observed 90% of the nation's population growth. Migration tended to be placed with a continued foreseeable future. Most of the growth took place in the urban periphery. City residents, mostly whites, were moving into a mushrooming suburbs in unprecedented numbers. Internal migration stimulated new mass and new suburban housing developments available by federal mortgageship, the HHFA at the time, you know, or FAH. We did videos about that. Income tax deductions for mortgage interest and a rapidly rising automobile ownership. New highways linked the suburbs and the black migration to the central cities. The startling shift of the urban population to the metro fringes has severe consequences. Huge numbers of suburbanites still worked in the central cities. By the 1950s, their journey created enormous traffic congestions and limited by harder-way highways linking the cities to the suburbs, as well as the cities in themselves. Coincided with the mass exodus to suburbia, public transportation declined as automobile ownership use increased. Auto sales were booming throughout the 1950s. Americans bought 7.4 new cars in 1950, a record for the automobile industry, and some 61 million vehicles clogged the nation's highways. Meanwhile, public transportation ridership declined over 50% between 1945 and 1955, dropping from 23.3 billion passengers ride to 11.5 billion. At the very same time, mass transit been in greater demand. American seminarians generally preferred the automobile, even if it meant facing the daily commission route. As Eisenhower Advisor Commissioner on Intergovernmental Relations noted, solving the emerging metropolitan transportation crisis was impeded by a maze of governmental jurisdiction that cut across urbanized areas. The local government pattern in metropolitan areas are unbelievably complex. The number of government units in the per metropolitan area averaged around 96. At least in 25 cases, metropolitan areas split across state boundaries. The New York City metro area had 1,000 government units. Chicago had 900 government units, and Philadelphia had 700. Only Miami-Dade County had established true metropolitan area government structure by the late 1950s. Few metropolitan areas had developed effective transportation or land use planning agency at the time. The urban metropolitan or transportation problem demanded a metropolitan solution. but a regional transportation system or planning approach had not yet been developed. You know, they had one. So they was building up and thinking that they had to go across, which eventually they did, to tear across the black community. You know, about how he was enamored by the Autobahn and he really wanted that. Also, you get a chance to look up this conference by Eisenhower, the President's Economic Council of Economic Advisors, who urged the cabinet that the highway should be used as a government as an important economic tool. You know what I'm saying? So it was just like what they call eminent domain today. You know, it was no stopping this happening when the government got down to it. They're gonna make sure they're gonna do it and make sure it was gonna happen. You know, so anywho, this is a real deep one. I wish I could read more into this, but I ain't trying to bore y'all. But you know, these means they had to destroy our progress, our economic progress is real. You know what I'm saying? The invention of the Highway Trust Fund. We looked that up too. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, I wish I could read y'all more of this and get y'all more into it. But what Bobby Hemmitt said is true. They had a meeting together and said, you can't have this. You got to break this on up. Anywho, this is a Koski of Fun Day. You know, hit the like button. You know what I'm saying? Show some love. Hit subscribe to the channel. You know what I'm saying? You know, we're going to keep on pushing with this Black history. Peace.